The only attendees right now are Chief Quigley and Linda Cole.
And who?
Linda Cole.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we, like I said, you see the email from Mr. Bell, the chair, which is in your packet. And there is an application for Paul. Does anyone have any questions or want to do further discussion?
Make a motion to approve Mr. Sorsak as associate member for a one-year term.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous vote. Would anyone like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Sanjay Fernando and Ms. Valerio Romano from associate members to full-term members?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Okay, we might just need to check on who's filling what term. I believe Mr. Fernando is the longer-term member, so we should probably put him in the longer term of the full remaining. Okay, now we are at license permits and events. We have the Cohasset Rotary Club Road Race by the Sea, April 4th, 2024. Is there anyone here who would like to discuss that? Anyone from the audience?
Is Chief Quigley on for that? Because he,
Oh, yeah, Chief, are you here for the road race, Chief Quigley? Okay, great, thank you.
I could answer a question if there.
Okay,
from the
oh,
Rotary,
great,
right.
okay, thank you.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay, yeah, this is just a standard event. Our events group met, no issues, and we'll fine tune the plan as we get closer to the event, but no issues at all.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the Cohasset Rotary's request for the road race by the sea on April 7th, 2024?
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have a filming request, Amazon Prime Paranormal Series, Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, for 4 hours of filming. I think the issue here is they want to be inside Town Hall, which I don't think they can be. So they can do the exterior, but not the interior.
Based on the application, it looks like they're looking to do B-roll filler footage. So I don't know if that affects. It's
Steering videos.
It's,
They wanted to,
something showing.
this is to supplement the work they'd already done. They needed a little extra, just, like split, to cover this. I think they did want to get in, and if they did, they as I understand it, they'd already agreed to pay for a staff member with them full time. So, and I think it was for a maximum couple of hours.
Just hire something person.
I'm happy, I'm happy to restrict them to the outside too and tell them that's all they can do.
I'm not sure.
weren't they here, they were here in June, right? They made enough,
Or it was last year.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't remember exactly. So we can restrict them to the outside, that's fine.
I think we probably need to. That would be my motion and recommendation, but how does the board feel?
That's appropriate.
I'll go along with it.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the extra filming on the outside of the town hall, if that's what they're looking for.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Okay. We have, the next item is assignment of police detail for all 2024 elections/votes. We have the presidential primary Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, the annual town election Saturday, June 8th, 2024, state primary Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, and the presidential/state election Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the police detail for those elections?
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right. All right, we have Jack on the motion, Chris on the second. All right, all those in favor, please vote aye. Aye. Unanimous aye. All right, we have a relocation of election hall for that first presidential primary to Wilcox Commons on March 5th, 2024. Mr. Senior, if I understand, this is the place that we would be relocating under our existing plan with respect to the election.
Correct. And the clerk is actually happier with this facility. It allows a little more, it allows her to direct people better to the precincts. This is more room.
Okay.
I just have a question. So is it both rooms or is
No,
it,
it's just, well, I mean, it's this whole space.
so that opened up?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then people will come in the front door and then they can get precinct screens, so they go to the right area.
Okay. And is,
Usually when there's only two, now there's three, it's a little more.
okay. And was this the backup plan and the emergency plan? Okay, not like the high school?
No, this was always the backup. They were exploring a new backup. I believe that's Deer Hill School, but I don't know if that's been facilitated, I don't know if that's been formalized yet.
All right, all those in favor of the relocation of election hall to Wilcox Commons for the March 5th election, please, would someone be interested in making a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're moving right along. Approval of special counsel.
We do have Treasurer Collector Linda Cole available, so I can give you a very quick synopsis, and she's available. There was a plan created some time ago with New York Life that has become very complicated, and they're not working cooperatively. New York Life is no longer working cooperatively. We're trying to unwind it. We don't let any new people in, and we're trying to unwind it a lot into moving plans. And we've got a roadblock. So the treasurer collector went and talked to our existing councils. No one had the degree of expertise to be able to work as, you know, to really engage them. She was able to find a recommendation to Murphy Hesse, a gentleman in Clifford Rhodes, who specializes in these kinds of retirement plans. We're hoping that it will be a very quick resolution. And New York Life will be able to release this and allow people to move their money to other locations as they choose. The fee cap, it would be no more than $5,000, and I would hope that we would never even get to that. Hopefully a strong letter and maybe a phone call or two will be able to move something. So that's the hope. And the treasurer collector is available if anyone has any questions.
Chris, what is the underlying issue here? What are they trying to?
The underlying issue is how the plan was created, Jack. It doesn't seem to have been created in a way, it seems to have been created in a way to make the town the plan owner as opposed to the employees the plan owner.
Okay,
Town should have been the plan sponsor.
right.
We're trying to fix that, and New York Life has been difficult to work with. Because the town shouldn't be the plan owner, it should be the plan sponsor.
Yes.
So it apparently was created in an unusual way. This is at least 15 years ago, maybe 20. And we're just trying to fix that. And
No, I get it.
Okay.
I get it. I just wanted, that's what I thought it was. I just wanted to confirm that. It's not uncommon when they set them up because they really put a lock on, that nobody can ever take the contract away. And I don't think our employees benefit from those
no,
things.
we actually have other plans now, and which people can go and go to as they want. But it's become complicated for people to access their money, which is not good.
No.
So,
I'd make a motion to approve the special counsel.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Okay. A stabilization fund policies discussion. So we had a draft that we had reviewed, we, the select board, right before town meeting. And we were close to finalization. We just really wanted advisory to weigh in on the edits to the draft. I have emailed the head of advisory, the new head, Gina Stino, who's now the chair, about advisory taking a look before we vote on it. Typically, they vote before they do. They vote before we do. The only thing I wanted to flag for the board, and and get your sort of reaffirmation here is that, really on two issues, reaffirmation for one, and I'm bringing up a new issue. The first one is capital made a lot of edits to the policy. Most were ministerial, but one was removing the language that the select board intended to continue maintaining the stabilization fund and then increasing it, unless there was some extenuating circumstance or something like that. With the point being that we're creating these funds as a way to fund long-term investments. Like, for example, our roads and our school capital, the intent isn't to drop it to zero. And so I would suggest we want to put that language back in and not delete it, because that was the point of the financial plan. And I think it's an important policy. I also think it's what we represented to the voters before they voted on the stabilization fund. And so I realize a lot of people didn't, but a lot of people did, and it passed. And so I think that we should memorialize what we were telling the voters as well.
Can I make a motion to that effect?
I don't think we need, maybe a motion that the select board's intent is to write back into the policy that we want to maintain the funds at the existing level and do the 2.5% increase.
I would make a motion to reinsert the language deleted by capital that gives us the right to,
Reflects
reflects our
our
intent to
maintain the fund.
maintain the funds.
I'm not quite understanding. So the stabilization was passed by town meeting,
Yes.
right? So the language that was passed, is that changing? Are we,
No,
No, this is,
Okay.
it's the policy.
No, we're putting
it's a
it back.
policy. It's a policy
it's
that
a
we're doing.
policy, which policy was in what was passed at town meeting?
There was
There's
no,
no
there was no
There was
policy.
No policy, okay. I
But-
just want to clarify that we're not undoing or something.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that we had a draft policy, capital edited it to take out a portion of the policy that was something that we were telling people we intended to do, which is maintain the stabilization funds for the roads to like keep on a 20-year plan instead of dropping the stabilization funds to zero in 2025, which would obviously wildly throw us off the plan if we did that.
So I understand
Yeah.
that. What I'm trying to find out is whether or not what capital stabilization did is what the town actually passed.
No, the town rejected that. In terms of, well, the town didn't really vote on it one way or another, but the,
No. I apologize
sorry,
for
go,
interrupting.
Chris.
But our explanation to the town, on which the town voted,
Yes,
was that these funds would stay in existence for an extended period of time.
yeah, yeah.
And their language is saying that it's going to flatline.
It was our intent, and they just took it out one way or another. So in fairness to Capital, they're not saying one way or another what they intend to do. The problem I see is that we, the select board, who represented all of this to our voters, should make good on those promises and put that language back into the policy. Because we also know that there were folks who disagreed with us, but the majority did, and the majority passed the
I
vote.
just want to make sure there isn't language in what was actually passed.
No,
with
no,
Laura. That's the
no,
only thing.
no.
Because if there was, we'd have to take it back to town meeting.
No,
This is a policy change. I don't have a problem.
Yeah,
no.
My
yeah,
motion stands.
yes.
So I just have a couple of questions. So in the funding source, section 2, it does say the additional tax that can be appropriated for any year is limited to an increase of 2.5% of the amount when it was last appropriated. In each year after the town has approved a stabilization fund override, the select board has the option to maintain the fund at the same amount, increase the fund and taxes up to 2.5%, or decrease the fund. Doesn't that essentially, there's been so many drafts, I can't remember.
Yes, so that lays out, and let me see, you got to download it because it's the red line version. You might be looking at the last version.
I have no idea. They're not dated or drafted.
Yeah, so, yeah, the problem was, unfortunately, the way the edits were made, it's not in a regular red line, and I'm not exactly sure why, but
Okay,
the point is that we want to maintain the fund amount and increase it unless there's, again, I forget the exact language. I'll have to go back to the earlier version that we looked at before these edits were made
okay,
and reinsert that language. And then and I'm flagging this to, I flagged this to everyone. I flagged this to advisory, to the head of capital, to the head of the schools, just so everyone knew what was going on before we discuss this right now. So that way, I don't think this is a controversial change. I think we just, to your point, have to figure out the exact language, and I need to figure out where they put the language
Yeah.
and get it back up again.
So if I amend my motion, we insert the language as stated by the select board.
I think we'll work on language to meet the intent of
The intent.
what we represented to the voters, and we'll have a chance to actually look at the exact language. I just want to make sure our intent was all aligned before we, presented something to advisory. The other thing I wanted to raise is that in this policy, and that we had a lot of back and forth on this, and Ellen, I know that you and I remember you had focused on this too, is that with the school fund here, we were looking at trying to figure out, well, what's in the stabilization fund versus what comes out of capital stabilization. And there, the intent really was to address like the big long-term purchases for like maintenance and repairs at school facilities and school sites out of the stabilization fund. Capital fund was more for things like technology and bus leases or computers. I look at the proposed draft capital plan and I'm seeing 300,000 in desks that are coming out of the stabilization fund, which is, candidly contrary to what the
300.
policy says.
and desks?
I'm sorry, retiling all
Retiling the Deer
classrooms.
Hill, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's 35,000 out of capital for furniture, which when we get into that, I have a lot of comments, but.
Okay.
So what, to your point though, what does not belong?
There's some gray.
What does not belong, and I mentioned it to Michelle, on that is the request for 2 athletic 15-passenger vans does not belong in the school stabilization fund. That's not repairs, that's not maintenance, that's not safety. So it either has to come out of where we normally get vehicles out of, the capital fund, or it has to come out of the ever-depleting athletic revolving fund, or it has to be deferred. I'm not quite sure why we need 2 15-passenger vans and 9 buses now. If the bus lease were dropping to 8 and we're going to use 2 vans, that might make sense. But there's no team in the school that has 15 athletes and coaches on it, so.
So I think this goes to my point, like we've created these lines. We don't necessarily need to, but we have.
Yeah,
And so if we adopt this policy, these are the discussions
Right.
we'll have,
Right.
which I think still makes sense, but I did want to raise it because just looking at the plan immediately brings up this issue,
right, right.
Yeah, I think we've run into, this was set up so the schools would have the assurance that there was a funding for their needs. And now I think a lot of people are looking at it as a slush fund, which is not the intent.
Well, I don't know about a slush fund, but I think I think that people are trying to fit things into, they think schools and, schools are schools, versus, because if it doesn't come out of the school stabilization fund, then it comes out of the capital stabilization fund, which then competes with other needs, like, for example, police, DPW, elder affairs. And so I could see there being a push to put a lot of stuff into the school fund. And
That's exactly the point. The intent was to reserve these for schools.
Yeah.
And I think we ought to maintain the integrity of that.
So I guess the question is, so it sounds like from what I'm hearing, we do want to try to maintain the delineations that exist in the stabilization policy in terms of what we're intending to use the school stabilization fund for as compared to the capital stabilization fund. Is everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so how, I look at the school stabilization fund, and this won't win me any friends, not that I have many to begin with, but facilities really should be driving the repairs and maintenance priority list for the schools. Because facilities are the custodians of the schools. And the town owns the buildings. And the schools should be driving the capital requests, what technology they want, what enhancements to learn, teaching and learning, what vehicle needs they have, and which used to compete for capital. Do we get Chromebooks for the kids, or do we get new curbing for the sidewalk? I mean, those were the decisions. So that's kind of how I look at the school stabilization fund.
I would agree, and I would say very specifically, the understanding was, and it met widespread support from all elements of the community, that we need the facilities to be maintained properly, and we wanted an income and funding source. So that was what it would be for. Should not be for the capital, should not be for this, to keep our schools in good repair. So I agree with you. And well spoken.
The only thing, when we get to a final vote, Madam Chair, is can we please separate the two policies?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. I have them separated, but I wanted you to still see
Yeah,
capitals changes, which now that I look at them, they're hard to see because of the way it's redlined.
Right,
But
right.
absolutely.
thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. All righty. So I'm going to let advisory know, and we'll hopefully hear back from them, because I did think that it was important for us to adopt the policies before we began moving forward on, capital items, or as we move forward, not before, but as we move forward.
Those advisory, then they vote, they come back to you and you vote, is that the plan?
Yeah, because advisory typically votes first and reviews first, I think, just like the warrant articles.
I know they have a meeting scheduled, I just don't remember exactly when, it's early February.
I think Jean's trying to figure out when exactly the next time is. So
So
we,
this will come back to your agenda, then sometime in February. Okay.
yeah, so we just need to look back and find that original language with respect to the intent. And it may be a small fix, but I think it's an important one. Okay. Oh, I think I see where it is. Now that I look at the edit. So now we're at the draft capital plan presentation. Michelle or Chris, would you like to take it away?
I'll go and jump in, but I will say this, so, we're gonna go through this. Someone already pointed out the buses, so I pushed it back over there because I didn't think it rated the priority. I mean, I realize it's a school request, but what we'll do is we'll just drop it down. My recommendation then is to drop it down. If you notice that everything above the bold line there, it says total, we're recommending funding.
Okay.
The things below are, it's 3, that'll be 4. I'll put those vans in there. Our recommendation is that those become like a secondary, if there's money available, if projects change, those will get funded.
Right.
So again, I don't blame the schools for that. That's me. So we'll put that down. My recommendation is that they would go in that smaller group of 3, now 4 items at the bottom of the plan, as being asked for, but not recommended at this time because we don't have the funds for it. And then we can go through the rest of it. I'll let Michelle walk through the rest of it. We've been on this multiple times. I'm actually feeling pretty good, actually. The only thing that you do need to see, you'll see quote in progress. The heating system in this building has to be replaced. There are unfixable problems. It's a higher tech system that unfortunately has some problems with the pipes. It's a heat pump based system.
Is it water-based,
No, it's not. It's a Freon based.
Freon-based?
And the problem is the pipes I don't want to get into any more of the details other than there's some problems with the piping, and after having Mitsubishi, which is the company that builds the whole thing, come in, they recommend that the pipes all be replaced and maybe pieces of the system. a quote is in progress. When that comes in, we're gonna make that a top priority because this building has to be heated and cooled. The cool is not so much of a problem, right? That's problem one. The problem two is it was undersized, it was built undersized. Which is not uncommon in commercial space, but this is not commercial space. This is.
Those who've been in the commercial thing know if you build it, it's undersized, you run it at full capacity and it breaks.
So that's what's been happening. So, and it's harder to heat, believe it or not, than cool. It's not as big a problem to cool. The problems have come in heating cycles. I don't know why. I'm not an engineer.
Well, I do, but you don't want to hear it. Okay?
Well, you get it.
I agree with you. That's all. Let's.
So that number is going to be presented and we don't know what it is. And we've been talking about an estimate and it's going to be a 6-digit number. But it's gonna be one of our top priorities because this building needs to be, that system has to be replaced. With that caveat, I'm gonna step back and let me show you.
Would you want me to go line by line or?
That'd be good.
Yeah, okay. All right, so top priorities, the facilities department recommends the middle high school fire alarm repair. While we know that's going to be a significant dollar amount, we're looking for funding for the engineering portion for this cycle. And that's $175,000. The actual estimate to repair the alarm system is significantly more. And we're looking to fund that probably the year after, but we need to study first. We have this CSCR building, which is on Parker Avenue, that we had an assessment done, I think 2 years ago now. They've identified some items that need immediate repair. One is the HVAC system. Currently, right now, it's in the crawl space. It needs to be brought up because it is in a flood-prone area. So we need to bring that up out of that space and replace the system. The second also addresses the Parker Ave building. It's a new roof. They've had significant water damage due to the roof not being repaired. So we're saying we need a roof of $40,000. Facilities has been making small repairs as needed to the roof, but it's time the roof be stripped and a new roof be put on.
Can I ask a question about that? So when I was on CPC, I think the town or CSCR went to CPC for Parker Ave. And there was a whole back and forth about the historic designation and was it or wasn't it? I think it landed, ultimately it was. And so are we going to CPC for any,
So we're not for these items because there's a host of items that need to be funded. So
for CPC, you mean?
we're going to fund these this year out of the capital account and then look to CPC for other items.
Do we have a lease with CSCR?
The lease has since expired. We should get into a new lease agreement with CSCR.
Okay. Are they, well, this should be a separate, I'm just thinking, as we put in a lot of money into that building, we want to land that plane, including if they intend to be the long-term tenants there, because that's such valuable space. I could see us potentially, depending on what they're thinking, we might be thinking something too on our end.
Their intent is to lease it for the long term.
At the same time, it's a town building and it's just not, if we don't invest in it, it's going to become irrevocably damaged.
Quote unquote sailor's house, the guy that designed boats.
Haggerty House?
Yeah, it's the Haggerty House.
Yeah, the Haggerty
That's
House.
it was an old furniture.
Furniture, Cohasset Colonials.
Yeah.
There was a big debate about how historic it really was.
Yeah,
That came
I remember
down
that,
There were
yeah.
actually documents showing that it had, I don't think it looks anything like it did probably 200 years ago, but it's still a historic property. That said, these are things that we've been kicking off, but we did an assessment of all the town-owned properties like the Legion and all of that. And we've been working there. We've been getting things up to speed, I think. We're gonna have to circle back to Lightkeepers at some point in the not too distant future. We've gotten the lease done with the Legion. They're in good shape. The building is being maintained. We've been working with them as they need this one, and then eventually Lightkeepers are things that we're gonna have to talk about. This one in particular, they've done, unfortunately, they're a great organization. They just, repairs of village are not in their wheelhouse at all. And
So they're not contributing any money to the upkeep or repairs.
I think they're upkeeping the interior of the space. I just think these larger capital items, they don't have funding for.
And there's no grants or anything.
Not for these items.
There are things for operations, like for the things they do. And again, you know, they're a wonderful organization. I don't know how their fundraising works. I don't know how robust it is. And again, we do have to reorganize that. We do have to reset the lease terms with them at some point, this spring or this winter, I should say, probably.
Yeah, I think we should think through our approach because we just went through 2 lease cycles with the Legion and then CYBSA, and we required both of those nonprofits to do a lot on their end. And I'm not suggesting we should do that with CSCR because every situation maybe is a little different, but I do think we should strive to some sort of consistency. I'm thinking about the Legion in particular, where if I recall, that lease required them to do a lot on the maintenance.
Their lease does require them to maintain the building too, to be clear.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just, it's not happening, and the town ultimately owns it, and,
Yeah.
you know, we're in a place where we're afraid that we, number one, we want to break everyone's
Yeah,
attention.
we want to preserve our
Yeah.
assets.
Exactly. We wanna
Yeah,
preserve the-
yeah, yeah.
So we may want to look into that lease when they're coming up on it. They're a great organization, but that they kind of adhere to the,
Well, the Legion, we just re-signed for 20 years.
yeah, no, I'm just saying that they adhere, the Legion's maintaining the Legion.
Correct.
That's what I'm saying. If they're not, I mean, that they adhere to the lines in the lease. They have to maintain the building.
Well, I think if we're helping the Legion with larger capital repairs, then we should probably be consistent with CSCR.
with that.
I just wanted to make sure because I recalled the Legion having the responsibility there.
I think we ought to make sure that, you know, somebody's nonprofit is somebody else's, I don't care. So I think we ought to make sure that everybody's treated in the same manner. And if an organization is given a wonderful advantage of use of town property, waterfront property, both places and others, that we should be taking a good look at it and make sure that it's fair to all the taxpayers in the town.
So the next item, so we just received notice from National Grid that there's tremendous incentives on level 3 charging stations. A charging station typically about $80,000 for a level 3 charging station. The cost to the town per location is about $15,000 with their incentives. So we're asking for 3 level 3 charging stations. They asked that we identify 5 locations where we could put these. And then National Grid will come back to us and pretty much tell us where the 3 locations are that we can place them.
So it's 3 level 3. Okay.
These are DC fast charging stations.
Which we'll charge for like we do with the.
Yeah, I was just saying, we'll make
They're
that.
just vastly faster. They're like the ones you see on the highways for Tesla right there.
30-minute
It's,
charge.
you can charge almost 100, well, a large chunk in 30 minutes. You charge a lot more for it, but you also cycle through a lot more quickly.
So we definitely don't want to put these in like a high traffic parking area like the Village, because then they'll take up spots we need.
So the places that we identified is Milliken Field, Beechwood Playground area, Sandy Beach, Lightkeepers, and the location escapes me right now. But those are the locations we identified.
Why there?
Because currently they don't have any charging stations. They are high traffic areas and
Okay.
they're not taking up municipal parking spaces.
I was just curious.
And one of the reasons we're not even here is we don't own this parking lot. This is actually the swim trust owns the parking lot. We have a
Yeah.
lease
Yeah.
for it, but we actually can't use it. We have very limited access to this, but theoretically in the summertime because of, swim meets and swim use. So we'd like to put something here. We just have to work with the swim trust to do it if there's a desire.
Sorry. If it weren't financially advantageous to get more charging stations, would this come up at all? Is there demand for it? Are we hearing that, people are waiting in line to charge?
So I think, yes, they're not waiting in line for a level 2 charger because it just takes so long to charge your vehicle. But if we had level 3s, level 2 just takes a significant amount of time. And the way our fees are set, that if someone stays there after 2 or 3 hours, they're probably getting minimal charge. And It's substantial amount of money. Do it. You do it.
We get that money,
Yeah,
We have money, yes.
we've actually generated a decent amount of funds.
then we should have more.
I think the level 3 charge will actually generate even more, and they can become an incentive for people to come into town, charge and, do business while they're here.
And what we're hearing, and you may know more about this, is what we're hearing is that the level 2s, eventually, there'll be obsolescence with some of the
Yeah.
level 2s.
Mm.
So we're getting ahead of it instead of being behind it.
I do think the level 3 will be very popular, so much so that I'd be tempted to look at something in the village to maybe drive a little traffic in a spot that people will be in and out of. But that said, you've done a lot of work on this, the spots that you suggested. So,
You know, there's a parking lot near One Pleasant that I think would be really good. Oh, yeah.
They
Okay.
just lease it and they will not allow any charging stations in their lots.
Oh, in that
Really?
lot?
really,
Yeah,
Really?
that they lease out because we asked and they said, not interested.
Because that's a,
They don't want to have to maintain them in the event that.
and there
Great
are
location
multiple
without
EVs
high
that
demand.
park in that lot routinely. Anyway,
okay.
if I could ask one more question. Are we limiting to 3 or is National Grid limiting to 3? How did we come up with 3?
We can have as many as 5. But we limit it to 3 just for financing purposes.
Thank you.
I mean, if you want the rest to do fine, I could. I mean,
I'm torn because I do think this is going to be something popular that people will like, but at the same time, we've got a lot of priorities. Not everything's going to get funding. So we can do 5, we're doing 3, feels like.
Excuse me.
Prices are steel. It's a steal.
And another thing, sorry. I was just saying, another thing to consider is while we're doing 3 right now, if they do give us approval and we can't fund the additional, we can wait till the next cycle of the Green Communities Grant and apply for the funding then, as long as this incentive stays with National Grid through that.
I think with the administration we've got at the DPU and on Beacon Hill, we're going to have more chances to move forward.
So then we can add additional ones once we get that green community funding. Sorry. Ellen.
No, nothing, no. I had a stupid thought, so I'm gonna refrain.
The next is vehicle replacement of the natural resource officer truck. That truck actually cost $73,000. We have a $20,000 earmark, which reduces it to $53,000.
And the current truck is out of service. I confirmed that with Chief Quigley today, so we do need to replace this vehicle.
So what is he driving?
We have another pickup that he's using, apparently. So, I mean, there's a couple of pickups in the fleet.
Yeah,
Like I said, apparently he's using a different one. So. He doesn't do a lot of animal pickups typically, thankfully, the son. So we really want a vehicle that's fully equipped for him to do that as he needs to.
okay.
So next is the electronic parking and RTF enforcement. So that's going to replace our current electronic, our ticketing system. Currently, right now, they're not being serviced. They're constantly going down. They're reverting back to paper tickets. The system's not great. The RTF enforcement is a license plate reader, so it'll help us with enforcement of the RTF with the limited staff we have up there. So we're recommending that, and that's $71,000. Next is a UTV, which is $28,300. They currently have, I guess, an ATV. The UTV is smaller in nature because they can't get in the woods with the ATV. They can't get down the train tracks. So they're limited where they can go with the vehicle they have. So they're requesting a second vehicle.
So money for an ATV. Seems expensive. I mean, I raced dirt bikes all my life as a kid. I mean, an ATV, that seems relatively expensive for a,
Yeah, but you weren't the police.
I was running from them.
Yeah.
That I'm happy to provide.
Is this a second vehicle or a replacement?
Jeez, got more crumbs on it. I can shake a stick.
The other one doesn't service all the areas they need it for. And I think Chief Quigley's on it. You can talk to it if you'd like to.
I'm not averse to that, Michelle, by the way. I'm just looking at the price. It's just-
The next is the TASER lease program. That's $20,000. So that's all, that's everything for the police. Now we're moving on to DPW, the RTF scale. I think they welded and soldered that for the last time. It's $65,000. Same with the 26-ton service lift, $48,000. That is antique in nature. They're also requesting a dump truck to replace their F-550. That's $165,000. That's something that they have pushed off since last year, and they're asking for it this year. Next, you have fire department. You have the command vehicle for $64,500 that replaces the 2012, and these are all within the vehicle replacement schedule. The next item, so we have town hall furniture, $15,000. This item is here in the event that there is a move of town hall staff, because they will need town hall furniture. Next is elder affairs. So they received 2 vans in 2019. The vans don't really accommodate their needs. They've had them now, they've been driving them, they found a better way. Bob Sylvia, one of the drivers, actually went to CarMax today to see if there was any trade-in value for the vans. Significant trade-in value for these vans, as a matter of fact, $31,000. So that'll offset this pricing and actually get them what they need. And they're requesting 1 van and 1 caravan, because they don't feel as though they need 2 large passenger vans, because they were just granted that handicap accessible bus. So there's 2 vehicles on here, and 1 is the transport vehicle and 1 is just simply a caravan. Included in these prices is a small trade-in value of $15,000, but knowing that now it's $30,000, we can bring these down a little bit. So the next cycle you'll see.
That sounds like 2 additional level 3 chargers. Just by my math.
So this is $130,000 for the 2, including 15,000 trade. And now we're just going to add another 15,000 trade, because the total trade value is 30.
Correct, but there'll be additional trade because they might trade in the second van as well.
Okay.
They have 2 vans currently,
Oh, okay.
so we're just trying to figure out if that's the best way to do things.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Next, we already talked about the HVAC system here at Wilcott. Quotas in progress. We are hoping to have that tomorrow. Next, we have a request from Recreation to repave the Sawyer Street parking lot. That's $100,000. Then we move on to the school request. So the bus lease, 8 diesel buses, they're requesting $150,000. Typically each year, capital agrees to fund $90,000. We spoke to the schools this year. They feel as though that's not enough. Their transportation fund can't fund the additional money this year. So they're asking for the total $150,000.
Did they say why?
If I recall, they said that their bus contract for the drivers was higher.
Yeah.
And I did ask for just some backup, I don't believe we've received it yet, so.
The next,
I mean, I don't know if people know, but you have to pay for transportation, so, for buses, so there is a fund.
Right, it's a revolving fund, and the October balance was, I want to say like $28,000 in October. I don't know if they had collected all of the transportation fees at that point. Yeah, I mean, the formula for which the schools and the town came up with for the town to support leased buses is kind of archaic at this point. It goes back to 2015. It was based on a maintenance model, you know, and having a full-time mechanic. But I think you do need backup on why they can't, very specific.
the next is the electric bus lease. So we did enter into that agreement for the electric school bus, the pilot program. It's a 5-year program at $25,000 a year for the electric school bus, which adds an additional bus to their fleet.
So, 2 stupid questions. Is that subsidized by National Grid, by the state?
So we did receive a grant, and that's how we were able to get this for $25,000 a year.
It's through the state, though. It's not through National Grid.
No, it's not through, it's,
Didn't the AEC get it?
Yeah.
yeah, but it's
It's one of the acronyms from the state, I forget.
Yeah.
It's one of their energy acronyms. And also the company subsidized it because we're a pilot for them.
Okay.
They want to be able to show that an electric bus works in Massachusetts so they can sell more to other people.
And did we get any clarity on what the 9th bus would be used for? Would it be on a regular route? Would it be,
So it would be on the way I understand it, it would be on a regular route. However, it can't be used for those short trips, like the longer trips back and forth, like sports programs and field trips and things of that nature. So it would strictly run a bus route.
so the morning and afternoon pickup and drop off?
It comes with a charger too. It comes with a level 3 charger, actually. which they're looking to install. So
Great.
Do we have any data on the electric bus? Because we're in,
as a start, we just, I don't think.
I don't think we've taken possession of it. The charger just got installed, and I believe the bus is due in, I think it was due in anytime now.
okay, yeah, because it was voted on at town meeting.
Yeah, it was. It just took a long time for delivery and hammering it.
Okay, we should track it.
That's part of the pilot program, so the company is going to track it. So
Okay.
you can also track it.
There should be a lot of detailed reports that should be able to be shared with everybody once it's.
The next item is to replace all of the interactive projectors at the high school. It's 46 projectors at $254,000.
Skip the Chromebooks.
Oh, sorry, I skipped the Chromebooks. So the Chromebooks were under a 3-year lease. The 3-year lease term says $143,000. That doesn't include shipping and things of that nature. That's why it's $52,000 annually. I believe this is the last year of the 3-year lease. And that's replacing those Chromebooks. And then we have the projector, the interactive projector for the West High School at $254,000. I believe that was part of the Lisa Radden pilot program.
Yeah, so last year, they funded these interactive projectors in all of the middle school. So this price works out to the same per unit pricing. There's just, the high school just has that many more classrooms than the middle school. I think it was 28 or 26 in the middle school. And Paul, your daughter can tell you how patched together the technology is in the schools in terms of projection and things hanging and it's, and your son, well, he probably now has better because the middle school was funded, yeah.
Yeah, they did classrooms in middle school.
And so the middle school is looking for enhanced audio, which is the Red Cat system. Pretty cool system, it's $40,000. What it is, it's essentially a microphone. So their voice projects to the back of the classroom, because some of the classrooms, the way they're set up, pretty funky. They have the
Holes in the middle.
holes in the middle, kids are behind a pole, they can't hear, it's
And the kids have selective hearing, so this will help.
also true. But we should walk through.
It was that
a
every day.
pretty cool system. Next, so we have, coming out of the school stabilization fund, the finished retiling of classrooms at Deer Hill, $300,000. That'll tile everything. The whole school will be done. That is a complete project.
Can we talk about that? Because in 2020, we allocated $71,400 to tile all of the Deer Hill corridors. And in 2022, $100,000 to do classrooms and the cafeteria. So is the $300,000 the remaining? So what's remaining is more than half.
There's a significant portion remaining.
Was the pricing just not accurate back when the schools did this? And I was on the school committee, so I should know, but
I don't have an answer to that. I do know we have a new quote and the $300,000 is accurate. So I
okay,
can't answer that question.
okay.
Next, we have replacement of furniture, at Deer Hill. So we've been replacing furniture slowly. At all the schools, it's $35,000.
Does this finish Deer Hill?
I believe this finishes, I don't think it finishes all of Deer Hill, no.
Because again, 2022, 2023, there's been 35 and 35,000 for Deer Hill school furniture.
I don't think this finishes the entire school, but I could be wrong.
I think if I recall correctly from Capital last year, this came up and they were doing it in like chunks. They'd give them like
Right.
a certain amount of classrooms,
Right.
but not all of them, just because they didn't have enough money.
I'm just wondering if this finishes it.
Oh, yeah.
Next is they're now going to add Chromebooks to Deer Hill. So they want 100 Chromebooks at $35,000.
What are they going to do with the iPads?
I don't think they've stated what they're gonna do with the iPads, to me anyhow.
Wait, why are they going back to Chromebooks? That just seems like walking back into like the prehistoric age.
Integration into the other grades, because if some use Chromebooks,
Yeah, so when technology
okay,
started,
so
it was
well done.
Deer Hill and Osgood had iPads because the educational models felt that the iPads were the most user-friendly, and the progression from grade 2 at Deer Hill to grade 3 at Osgood, that transition was important, that the technology remained. And then in grade 6 through 12, it was Chromebooks. So they must see that it's more important now for the middle elementary kids to have Chromebooks. But we have like 10,000 iPads and iPad carts out there. They should have a plan for those.
so next we have middle high school indoor signage and classrooms and hallways. Their original request is $50,000. We took it down to $25,000. They were requesting wooden signs outside of the classrooms as wayfinding tools, because the school's confusing. Once you enter the middle school, do you enter the high school? And we just suggested maybe they could get a different type of signage, maybe something, maybe lesser quality,
Well,
but
lesser
will meet the needs.
Yeah. Utilitarian.
Yeah.
Would.
I'm reluctant to nickel and dime anything on this list. Just surprised that the cost and the need. but I'll let you go.
We've already talked about the athletic vehicles, so they're looking for two 15-passenger vans at the cost of almost $32,000. They did ask for that to be in the regular capital plan. I think we just spoke about it moving down to a priority 2 ask. We also have a school stabilization request for the bus parking lot at Deer Hill. I know they had their first meeting with abutters. There's a lot of questions there. There's also a lot of questions I think we have as to the cost of $250,000, if that's even enough to complete the parking area and get them what they're looking for.
Question here, just, the 2 new athletic 15-passenger vans for Avon Place. Have we always just used school buses? I mean,
They're saying they can reduce the need for school buses if they have these passenger vans, because they could fit essentially a team in each van, like tennis, golf.
We're not-
7 people on the girls' tennis team.
We're not.
Like
we're not
3 years ago.
attesting To the validity, we're just telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know, but, and so I think questions, and maybe it's for capital to ask, and maybe they will, it's like, okay, what teams? I think, Paul, the big reason is, it's tough to get drivers for the afternoon routes.
I get that.
And so coaches can be certified to drive these. You don't need whatever that bus
You need a
license is.
CDL, or you at least need a 1-ton. You need it, because even I have to have that. You have to have, if you're driving any over 1 ton, you need a Dodger certification.
Yeah, so
But I'm just wondering, because,
I don't know what team would fit in there.
yeah. So
I think somebody said golf. at one
We
point.
did hear golf. And I'm sure that will be a question that'll be asked by capital.
I mean, it's a nice way to travel.
Yeah, so I think you have to weigh how many teams will benefit and how many routes are going to be eliminated with a bus driver on OT in the afternoon to do golf compared to a coach driving a van with a small team. And if the cost benefit shows we're going to save on our school buses and our school bus drivers by doing this, then you do it. But if you're not going to save, then what's the point? So, bless you.
All right, moving right along.
So
Okay.
the next few items, you've seen several times on each capital request. They come up annually, and it's the asphalt road and sidewalks between Deer Hill and Osgood need to be resurfaced. We have the road from Pond Street needs to be resurfaced to the middle high school, and then replace the sidewalk and curbing entry to the middle high school. All of those items right here these are placeholders essentially. So we did go out and ask for formal quotes for this project. And what we're asking for is to do each campus all at once. So we would do Deer Hill and Osgood all at once, and we do the middle high school all at the same time. Sue's waiting for those quotes to come back, but they were requested a couple weeks ago.
And a quote for sidewalks and a quote, separate quote for the asphalt, for the road, so the parking. With the hope that they would all, again, as Michelle was saying, we do a whole campus at once and get it all done. Rather than do this piecemeal, it's just not effective. I mean, it's also, if you do it in conjunction with our paving plan, it also saves, why am I blanking on the term? Not the setup.
Money?
Yes, it saves money.
Mobilization.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It saves mobilization. So they come
my
in
hope.
once, they do it, they can do a couple more.
Yeah.
And I think the other school of thought here is that, you know, if we're taking one campus offline, we have to be mindful of all the projects that have to go on within the schools during the summer months as well. So here we are talking about a large project at the middle high school, which is the fire alarms. Well, we can't be paving outside at the same time they're doing, or
Well, we
we
could.
could be,
Good, yeah.
but
to just be
we have to be strategic in how we do it. But what I meant to say is we can't be paving Deer Hill and have the high school offline as well. We can't have two schools completely offline in the summer because we have recreation programs, we have all kinds of.
Summer school and
Yeah.
collaborative and, so, okay, so that makes me feel better that it's gonna be staggered, because if you do them all at the same time, then they all need repairs at the same time, and it's another big chunk of money.
Right, so
Okay.
it will be staggered.
Okay.
Next, this was a new request. I don't have a lot of information. The schools requested the Osgood generator. I think this was precipitated from the last power outage we had. The kids at the Osgood schools remained in school for the day. The hallways were dark. It became a safety concern, so they're saying there's a need for a generator at the Osgood Elementary School.
So from professional experience, it is a top priority of the utilities to get schools back on before most any other facilities in the town. $250,000 to, I would argue, compete with that priority seems like money not wisely spent.
And there was a plan, because this is not new news. There was a plan, Brian Joyce had a plan, and he had access and right of first refusal for portable generators that he could get within an hour from notification that that the Osgood was out. So but that was years ago. I don't know what's,
And still.
so for that particular day, we did not execute that plan.
I think we did. I think the timing was off because the power outage happened in the afternoon. School was going to be out at 3 o'clock.
Oh.
It was a whole lot of effort to get this done. So they put portable lights in the hallways, as many as they could. They deployed as much as they could, as quickly as they could, while dealing with everything else.
Okay.
The other schools have generators?
Okay.
So Osgood is the only school in town without a generator?
Yeah, Deer Hill has one because it's the Emergency Management Center, and
The middle high school has.
middle high school has one. It's not a full-service generator.
It keeps the network up, I believe,
Heating.
in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Food service, network issues.
And the Osgood generator would be the same type where it's partial to sort of limp along until everything comes back on?
I believe so.
Okay.
I was, yeah, the superintendent seemed to indicate he wanted a full building generator. Again, again, this came
It's the first
directly out of
pass,
that
yeah.
power problem.
Yeah.
So I think it's got to.
Yeah.
I agree. $250,000 seems like a lot, especially when, to Ellen's point, there may be another plan that would be significantly more cost effective. And a few angry phone calls to the utility can be very effective. If they're from the town manager and the superintendent.
We had a lot of angry phone calls. There were 9 communities from here. Well, you were, I don't have to tell you what happened. So,
I was in the room receiving those calls,
Yes.
so different utility.
different utilities. So there were 9 communities that all lost schools after days because of that storm. So. Now, there are other technologies too. I mean, there are battery packs and all kinds of other things too. There's technology improves that might actually be as effective, but you know,
I'd just be reluctant to go fully redundant to grid power at a price tag like that.
Still moving forward with the schools, we have the alumni field fence for $90,000. And the alumni field bleachers for $100,000.
Portion of the fence.
So they want to put a 6-foot fence all around the entire field.
Why?
The 4-foot fence, they feel as though it's not safe. People can get over the 4-foot fence. They feel as though they need a 6-foot fence.
I could get over a
Kids can get
6-foot
over a
fence.
6-foot fence.
Yeah, they're just gonna fall another 2 feet.
I just, yeah, there isn't a high school complex that has a 6-foot fence around their track and athletic field. And I've been to every single one of them. The 6-foot fence, I don't get it. If you said the fence is falling down and it's a hazard as you walk around the backside of Alumni Field to get to the visitor side, the fence is askew and sharp edges and things like that, I'd say sure, because it's a very narrow path. But a 6-foot fence is not going to keep kids off the field shooting a lacrosse ball on a nice afternoon. And it- I think, did this come out of AI3?
No. I don't know.
So in that vein, there are a number of things here that I feel should be pushed back on, but I'm not sure if that's going to be done by capital or if that's something the select board should be taking a red pen through.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. So all of the school stabilization fund things, you're gonna have a separate meeting with school committee members. So you'll be able to have a back and forth with them about this in a positive, productive, collaborative way, of course. Because that's what your policy requires. So,
School, capital, and advisory.
yes.
All, yeah, all
Yeah,
four,
so you all
yeah.
come and you talk
Yeah.
about what the priorities are. Not that you all agree necessarily, but so that there's no grave disagreement, hopefully, on what these are. So,
Well, if we run into something like the fence or something similar, and we say, that $90,000, there are other things that we could need, and that's, I think, part of our role to look at that and say, or maybe, God forbid, we return the $90,000 to the taxpayers.
No, it's
well,
a
this is
fund.
actually, yeah,
I know.
well, the point of this conversation is to start this conversation.
Right.
So it's all being public.
Right.
I
So,
think,
so the bleachers, what's wrong with them?
So
They need cushions?
so the bleachers.
They need to be heated, Paul, come on.
Oh, that's
So
a
you
good point.
have the
You gotta remember.
bleachers for the home team, and then you have the bleachers for the away team, which are on the opposite side of the complex.
Yeah.
They would like to put the bleachers on the same side of the complex as the home team.
Where?
It would be right next to that, but you'd have to, I think, where they're sited, you'd have to remove all those bricks, the named bricks, and put those elsewhere.
So
Yeah.
home and away off the field?
So-
It's a recipe for disaster.
So a lot to push back here. It'll be a robust.
Yeah,
fruitful
no, it'll be
conversation.
great conversation, and Capital does a great job of fleshing these things out, so,
But that's not repairs or maintenance.
Well, again, and also, they originally put these in the main capital plan too, and I pushed them.
push them over. So
So
we should just push them down.
we can push them down and put them at the bottom, again, as a second, because there's only so much money. They're at the bottom, by the way, the list of theirs, those are at the bottom of their priority list, to be clear.
They're the last two.
Yeah, the last two, so we can move them to that phase 2, where we have other projects for the town as well.
well, what I might suggest before any of this goes to capital, because capital technically only, their job is to make recommendations on warrant articles we recommend. So it sounds like we really haven't decided if we want to recommend these as warrant articles. I think it might make sense to go back to the schools and flag for them the conversation and the concerns the select board has. And I suspect what you may find simultaneously is when you get some of these quotes, and they're going to be a lot more than we think, particularly on things like paving, that may, sort of average out. Like right now, there's 1.7 million in requests. We only have 1.5 in the fund. So we're already at 270 over, right? And so when we're looking at things like bleachers, fence, generator, if those start to fall out, then we're probably in the strike zone of the money we actually have anyway.
Well, and they also have, certain school committee members had expressed an intent that, we need to start saving out of this fund as well for roofs and things like that.
That was my
And-
thought.
Yeah, that was-
my thought.
that was-
That's, that they
yeah.
were gonna start putting some money away for those roofs and
Right.
things
And
like
this
that.
plan doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was part of the idea that we sold to this to the town that this would be a way till we have the funding.
It sounds like maybe what might make sense is to flag the concerns with the fence and the bleachers, and the seeming declination for the select board at this juncture to think this is a warrant article at this point. Questions, I think that Chris raised on the generator and Ellen seconded, including on the portable front, are good to also flag. And I think maybe what I'm hearing too is instead of doing the 250 for the Osgood generator, it sounds like that actually should be 250 for the Osgood roof. Because we know that roof is next up for repair and to start setting money aside for that purpose.
So I can tell you that today, Jason Earls did reach out to me and asked me about the accelerated programs. So they are looking to apply for some roofing.
And there's a meeting Friday.
O'Connor's gonna be in town.
Yeah, I was invited to go. It's MSBA, to discuss MSBA, so maybe it is about the accelerated repair program.
Because even if we get into the accelerated repair program, we'll probably still have to put some money
Yeah.
up towards it. So,
Yeah.
right, so it's not like it's, even if we get in, yeah. So if we start saving now, we might just be able to,
There are 5 other things just to put on your radar screen. So
Yep.
there's no prices on them, but you see Town Fiber and Munis.
yep,
We may have to make some changes again, depending on what happens with town, with the location of town facilities, by connecting into the municipal network. We have our own fiber network, which is awesome, and it's been a great source of redundancy and protection for our network. The other is Munis. We have an outdated financial software that's changed ownership multiple times. And it's going to be transitioned at some point because they're not really actively supporting it anymore. I mean, they're supporting it, but not giving us a lot of customer service, which is problematic. Munis is a very expensive product, but it's the best out there. And the others it's like A and then F, right? The other ones are all problematic in a lot of ways. We're not quite ready for that. I wanted to build our financial team a little bit more strongly before we made that ask. But that is going to be on the radar screen probably for next year. The other 3 that you see down here, the Enter Pavilion is the library. The bids came back, Michelle, a large number over their ask.
Between $600,000 and $700,000. They've since modified their plan, and we will go back out to bid with a modified plan.
But they still have a gap, and it's down here because, we recommend that they go back to CPC first or seek additional community funding before it goes to capital.
How much was already funded?
But the bids came back too high.
But money was
Yes,
appropriated.
money has been appropriated, but it's not enough.
It's not enough.
How much? I don't
I think
remember.
they have $425,000 total.
that includes
I think they
fundraising.
I think they only asked for $50,000 the first time.
125. Special town meeting 2022, library
Amphitheater.
That's CPC money.
Yeah, it was 125 from CPC.
I've got an
Okay.
Um,
They haven't gotten any from capital. They did get it from CPC.
And it's done private fundraising. Then we have these 2, engineering for the Parker Ave dock expansion. That's an ongoing question about, again, with everything else we're talking about on the waterfront. And then a mooring grid formal plan. So, I mean, those can be accelerated. The board says, you need to do those. We'll move them up. At the moment, they're down there. And then I think, we went to advisory a couple weeks ago to do an emergency repair for drainage and a study at the library. The drainage is underway. There's an ongoing issue on both sides of the library that was causing water infiltration that's been affecting the rec side of the building. And these fixes are going to hopefully end that problem. And then when the roof was being done, looked around the building and realized that the brick facade had really not been done in a very, very long time. That's probably decades and decades, even before the renovations. And there's one area there's a study underway right now to assess the condition and what kind of phasing needs to be done to repoint. There's one area on the front, on the Ripley Road entrance, that's bowing a little bit. Now, there's no fear, there's no expectation of fall. immediately. That said, bracing will be going up on there fairly soon, just to be safe. And that will be the first area that has to be repaired, but we're not sure what the cost is, so it's, you know, we were throwing out the number. We can go back to advisory. If it comes back soon, we'll go back to get that work done right away, rather than wait. But we're not sure what the phasing will be on that. So it's possible that might come back as a higher priority depending on what the study comes back. So just so that's on everybody's radar screen. And just so everybody also knows the number, so we've been allocating just slightly less than $2 million. You know, about $505,000 of committed debt service already, so it leaves the net at 1,491 is the amount of cash that's available to fund projects. The stabilization fund itself, though, has $1.4 million in it as well. So we have just slightly less than 1.5 million in available cash we'll have, plus any other, if we can put a little bit more in as the board has recommended we try to do, it'll be in there. And then there's also money available in the stabilization fund. So there is, and we'd recommend funding some of these projects through the stabilization fund in addition if we need, like, if we got to get this building done, you know, the heating system, we got to do it, right? If none of these things really reach the level that we really want to bond, they're not big enough to be worth it. So paying cash for these would be better if we can.
And then we'll hit the road and stabilization fund next in terms of the road paving plan.
Good news on that front is that we got another 100,000 from the state, from the millionaire, from the, whatever they call it the millionaire's tax, because everyone knows it by that term. So our share was another $100,000, so that's been added to our Chapter 90. So we have about $300,000 of Chapter 90 money this year, plus the $800,000 in the road fund. So we have 1.1 million. And Brian Joyce saw me in the hall and said, "It's already spent, Chris."
Yeah, I bet it is.
So I expect that those conversations will be ongoing. Paul.
We're actually gonna be having those, I think, tomorrow, Thursday.
Yeah, so the good news is there was a little more money from the state this year.
Okay. We're running over. We're half an hour over, so, but this, you know, the draft capital plan is really important. We were running over a little bit earlier. So I don't want to, we can continue to talk about the capital plan if anyone has any questions, but I think it sounds like the board's feeling is on the questions we had about the school things. Let's go to the schools first before we start moving that along, just so if, you know, there's a way to sort of navigate that. I suspect some of these quotes we're gonna get for the paving are gonna come in higher than we think anyway, so maybe a moot point, but that probably makes sense first. And I am trying to set up a meeting with the other committees on the stabilization fund where we can talk more about this as we proceed. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. Town hall update. Okay. So where we are now is we got the RFP responses back. Why don't we talk about that first, because that's probably the biggest update, and then I have a few questions for the board, but I think the RFPs are like the big thing.
So everyone's aware, we went through the RFP process. We received 2 responses to the RFP for the rental of temporary space for 5-year lease term. We received one, which is 1 Pleasant Street, and we received the second, which is 380 CJC. When we went through the qualifications criteria, they both scored comparatively the same. When you're talking about the space offered and available to employees. 1 Pleasant had slightly larger space than 380 CJC, but nevertheless, they were both comparative in nature. So then we moved on to the pricing component and we looked at the pricing for a 5-year lease. At this point, we didn't take into account any option to purchase because that is separate. And so we didn't look at that as part of this assessment. So as part of this assessment, we looked at the pricing for 380 CJC, and what they're offering the town is 6,350 square feet of space for the town employees. They have a significant amount of parking. They're offering, so the way we broke it up is we have a lease term from March 1 of 2024 to June 30th of 2024, so to end out this fiscal year. 380 offered us a price of $30 per square foot, and 380 CJC pricing is a gross lease price. So everything's included. The only thing we're responsible for is trash removal. Everything else is included. So the 4-month cost there is $63,500. That's an all-in cost. And then you move on to years 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they do escalate over the years. Year 2, they're holding at $30 a square foot, which is equivalent to $190,500 for year 2. Year 3 escalates to $194,310. Year 4, $198,196, 196, and year 5 being $202,160, 160. For a total 5-year, or if you want to say 4.5-year, lease term of $848,666.36. Once again, gross lease. So when we did the analysis for One Pleasant, they provided a triple net lease. So we had to factor in all the expenses, which is real estate tax, insurance, utilities such as water, sewer, you have your electricity, HVAC, elevator, and you also have to account for some common space fees. So what they're offering us is 7,544 square feet of space. Their rent per square foot is $22. However, we have to add in all the expenses. So when you add in all the expenses for the 4 months, you're coming up with $64,365.64. Year 2 of the lease is $203,353. Year 3 is $213,882. Year 4, $224,708. In year 5, $235,863, for a total of $942,173.56. We have an escalator on their expenses of about 10% annually, just to account for, any increases in insurance, utilities, things of that nature. Yes.
Just making sure. So the numbers that you quoted year by year, we should consider those apples to apples. You've got assumptions in there
Yes.
to make them
Yep.
apples to apples. Thank you.
We do.
Can I clarify? You said Pleasant Street is offering us triple net lease, and yet we pay expenses. How does that work out? Didn't you say that they are offering us a triple net lease?
So we're responsible for the real estate taxes, the insurance. CJC is a gross lease, so everything's included. With the triple net lease, we're responsible for those.
It's still coming in quite a bit higher.
So really, when you do the
That's really a
comparison,
double net.
I'm just breaking it down.
Not by much. And you get a
Yeah,
lot more
so-
space at One Pleasant.
You do.
right, so if you do the
Yeah,
comparison
right,
based
okay.
space for space, while 380 comes out slightly less expensive, if you factor in the same pricing for the same square footage, you're talking,
No, you know what? I blew the square footage. That was my fault.
but that's just a fair analysis of both properties.
But it's a sliver more expensive for substantially more space. It's not double the space, but it's 1,000 square feet more at One Pleasant.
Yes.
That's how I would characterize it. A sliver more expensive for another 1,000 square feet.
And like I said, if you go back to the qualifications of property versus property, yes, One Pleasant being in the village scores higher than CJC being away from the village or on 3A. But the space is comparable. One Pleasant is new. However, it may not be ready by a March 1 date. So CJC is more advantageous there because it's ready to move in immediately. So there's all these factors that went into the scoring. And like I said, when you shake it out, they're very similar. They're very similar in price. They're very similar.
Let's see, which building is that?
So when you talk about 380 CJC, you're talking about the space above Santander Bank.
Okay, over the mathnasium and all that stuff is, okay.
Yep, it's that whole wing, and then there's two separate wings, so a majority of the space is above there, and the second space is above feng shui.
They connected?
They're not connected.
So you have to go in and out.
Going in and out to access different parts of the departments. Okay.
Do we have any feedback on the restaurant smells? Be quite blunt about it. That is a big issue when you're near high volume
Yeah,
restaurant.
so I can just speak to when I toured the facility. It wasn't significant because most of the offices are in the back space.
Right.
So that wasn't a major concern. I mean, I guess it could be at times, but it didn't really factor into our decision because we were just looking for, space to accommodate as many people as we could.
Well, did you get hungry? I was gonna ask that, because psychologically, you get hungry, then the smells are affecting you.
How were the chicken wings?
Yes, Helen?
So in the One Pleasant Street proposal, in the parking summary, it said first floor office, 14 spaces. But when we were looking at the purchase, the parking space count was much higher.
Yes, it was, because we had control to move the parking into our space because now we owned the facility and we had rights to the municipal lot next door. So we were able to increase parking by pushing it towards the municipal lot. Because we no longer have ownership rights of this, we're limited in what we can do with that parking space.
Okay, because the municipal lot was always separate count. We had quite the go-round.
Yeah, it was separate, but you could still increase the footprint by pushing it towards the municipal lot more.
Okay. And we don't have that now, and he won't do it.
I don't know that he won't do it. And I should say, we can still go back to both proposals and ask questions and talk about the proposal and see what else we can do. And I also do want to mention, One Pleasant did have a proposal to purchase a purchase price. In the first year, we have a first right of refusal in year one to purchase the building in its entirety, or just the first floor after the 5-year lease term. And there's a credit back. The property owner of 380 CJC also gave us an option to purchase, but a different building, which came with a host of challenges. So I couldn't deem it responsive because it's not available now. It's something that would have to be built, and it's something in the future. So as far as considering bids, responsible, I didn't feel as though it was appropriate to open the pricing for that one proposal because it's fictitious in nature right now. It's not,
It's hypothetical.
it's not.
Call it hypothetical.
Is
It has been.
That's not been built yet?
Yes.
Over,
Yeah, so you have the plans. I did share the plans.
Are we,
with you, but
are we
I didn't-
allowed to talk about
Can we
it? or-
talk about it?
Yeah, we can certainly
Okay.
talk about it. But I'm just gonna
Yeah.
tell you, I don't have pricing because I didn't feel as though it was responsive, so I didn't feel it was appropriate to open the pricing.
And one of it is that it straddles public and private property, which is a whole nother complication. And it would require a lot of other approvals.
well, you have a lot of ledge, there's a lot of, it's gonna go through some bells and whistles, but we don't have a price on that?
Well, we
So we
do,
do, and we can certainly open it, but I don't think you can compare it to the price
Right.
that we have here. I think you can certainly consider it, but not part of this process.
But can we hear the price?
I can I'll open them tomorrow.
Oh, you haven't
I
opened
haven't even opened them.
You could still use the municipal parking if we're on Pleasant Street. I don't understand why we couldn't be parking on what we already own there.
oh, we can. And we can also, the other lot that's there, we can also take title control.
Yeah, well, that other.
It's right there. Yeah, well, you absolutely could.
So what are we looking at? Can we talk about this? What are we looking at for One Pleasant purchase or at the end of 5?
So One Pleasant purchase for first floor only, I believe, came in at 3.2 million. And the building in its entirety is 9.1 million. They're offering $175,000 credit to both proposals.
So essentially 3 million for the first floor, but as I understand it, they would have to get approval change the legal structure of that building, because right now it has to be sold as one unless they change it.
I believe that's coming up.
So they did put in, they did issue, I don't know the
Abutters were
terminology,
notified
right?
that-
Yeah, there's a hearing coming
Yeah,
up
there's a hearing
February.
coming up for it.
And that goes before whom?
Planning.
Okay, so.
So, okay, so One Pleasant is approximately 3 million for just the first floor. And that has 7,444 square feet. And they've offered the town an option to purchase within the first year if we want to go in that direction. So on the money, as it relates to 3 million, we've already set aside 500,000 in free cash to address town hall repairs, expenses, et cetera, but we haven't spent it or appropriated it yet. And so in theory, we could, at town meeting, reappropriate that free cash money if town meeting were so inclined towards that purchase. We could also take some of the existing free cash we have right now, let's say 500,000, and draw it down, because I think we have at least 500 that could be eligible for this. So then we're looking at needing to fund $2 million, which, if my math is correct, we could easily do out of the capital stabilization fund and not require any tax increase for the purchase of One Pleasant if we bonded over 20 to 30 years. And then that just leaves the question of the existing town hall, if we were to go in that direction, because if we bond 2 million over 20 to 30 years, I think we're looking at, we ran the numbers for CPC, I want to say, at the current interest rates, like 150 to 200 a year, which again would not require a tax increase. We could fund it out of our existing stabilization fund every year to address our municipal services, with the open question still being what to do about the historic town hall, the town hall. I think.
So could you run that by me again, the debt service on 3 million, or are you talking?
I'm talking about the 3 million. My quick math on this, because we're all just opening and looking at this right now, based on what I recall of all of the amortization schedules, is we could easily fund it to probably a $3 million purchase out of our existing capital stabilization fund.
But we still would then have the costs for whatever we do with Old Town Hall.
Exactly. We still have to figure that out.
I have a question. That other proposal, the one that you sealed, I do want to see the price on that. And does that proposal have anything, I looked at it. Do we know who designed it, by the way?
I don't know who the architect of record, it's not stamped.
No, I noticed that.
Yeah. So we can
The
certainly.
rendering
ask who the
was-
architect
It'd be
of
interesting to
record
find
is.
out who the architect is. It was the funniest thing. I was looking at it, a real strong resemblance to One Pleasant. But,
I can answer that, Paul. It's been reported that that was the rendering of the Stasco proposal up against the ledge was done by Clark Brewer.
I didn't want to say that, and I just wanted to confirm it. And, but my other question on that is, unless I'm missing something, in that proposal, is there any consideration for 41 Highland Avenue, or is it just a proposal to create a 41 and a half? All right, so it's that, because I saw the footprint of the existing building that's there on the plans, the rendering, and
And this is simply adding a building to the back.
that's putting building, so we're not, do they factor, again, without looking, you gotta look at it, so I'm HV, everything like that, so I'm just curious, that's all. It'd be
Yes.
Interesting to see what the proposal is, I'll leave it at that.
So for the edification of the public who's probably trying to envision this, we also got a proposal from Mr. Stasko to, and it's not totally clear to me, but it looks like to build a one-story building that appears to be a similar footprint and design to One Pleasant Street, built up in the back into the woods of Brewster Woods behind our existing town hall. I don't know what the proposal is for the zoning and ownership of land. It looks like
Zone residential.
there might be a proposal for us to buy the land he currently owns right now. which a lot of which appears to be ledge. I walked there yesterday. It's pretty rocky, like everything else in Cohasset. So that's the proposal that we received in connection with also his proposal as to the rental space at 380 CJC, which he also owns. So right now, we're just trying to like look at all the different proposals and figure out who's doing what and offering what. And Michelle, to your point, there is actually no building built or any permitted project that we're aware of for that property. Okay. Okay. Does the board have any other questions about the RFPs?
Just, I'd like to see the prices as soon as you're able to see them.
Michelle, I noticed that you also put in, which I appreciate at the board's request from last week, a repair list for our existing town hall. And so I think it would be helpful, and I don't know if it's possible to show it, maybe not, never mind. A renovation estimate. So we asked you to do an estimate based on, if we were to just repair everything as is, where would that land us?
So I actually met with Brian Joyce and John Callan, and I took what we were given from Commodore
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
when we were going to tear down the annex, rebuild it, and renovate historic town hall. We got actual bids in hand for square foot costs of what it would do, what cost would be for each component. So we went through each line item and we reduced based on no longer needing to demo the building. And we took some considerations for other items here. So we deleted some things that were on there. We added some things. We put some escalators in there. So the total project price, and this is today pricing. This isn't escalated for next year or the year after. We're saying a renovation cost of just what's there today is going to run $16.8 million.
That's with the annex, right?
Yes.
So you took the precise quotes or bids that we got related to renovating the existing town hall and extrapolated all of that to the annex, as if the annex were bid at the same time. Accounting for, some changes here and there, using a
Right, because
price per square foot.
when we did this the last time, it was a renovation of historic
Yep.
town hall and a rebuild of the annex. We were able to take all the demolition cost, all the structural steel, and strip all of those items out
Yeah.
that would go towards a new building, and just focus on the square footage of things that we would need to repair, and put that in.
So we would, at that, assuming that 16.8 could be held, that would be an all-in cost. We would basically have the same town hall, except it would be brought up to whatever's required for code. The auditorium would be usable, and for all of that, 16.8, and that's everything.
And this is just an estimate.
It's an
I know, it's just an estimate.
Until we put true bids out for the project. But this doesn't give us any flexibility in space, so it's exactly what you see today. It's just brought
Fair.
up to today's standards.
And do we have a price, Sands Annex? Without,
Just to redo the,
just to redo the quote unquote
Take it down.
historic part of town hall.
We do not have that. That we could do the same exercise we did here, take the square footage and the system cost.
It might be worthwhile, and the reason I'm asking you that, because we want to, we should have every T crossed and every I dotted.
I hate to add another scenario. However, because we do have what appears to be an attractive proposal at One Pleasant, and we know that politically, the only way any of this is going to move is if we make sure we address the historic town hall. I think what Paul has suggested is a worthwhile exercise. We should consider, and respecting the time of folks who work very hard for our town government today, a simple old town hall renovation. So not thinking about the offices on the second floor, just get it to the point where it can be used for public events,
We're just strictly speaking of the community space.
Yeah,
Community space, yes.
just the community space. Make upstairs safe, but don't plan on using it for offices.
So my only question
Please,
is that taking into account the annex will no longer be there?
go
Okay, so now we have to add all the toilet rooms and systems in there because currently there are no bathrooms in historic
Well,
town
wait a minute,
hall.
we talked about that earlier in another iteration. We still have that L that has the bathrooms right outside the door by the stage.
But it's part of the annex, so
It
you
is
can.
part of the annex. I know that.
So you want to keep part of the annex?
If you kept the bathrooms, so you're minimizing, you take down that part of the building where the wall is, so that's, you have your bathrooms for your functions, you know what I'm talking about? That's the thing, and instead of factoring, because you're just adding more and more expense, try to keep it as is. So what do we have? We have a town hall, bang off to the right, you got the ladies' rooms, the men's rooms, you got the water coolers, and you've got an elevator if need be. And everything to the right of that,
So you were talking about a plan to remove the annex, cave over, keep the systems in the basement.
yes,
And run historic town hall.
yes.
And the intent here, and the reason I'm bringing this up is to give you flexibility as you're doing this, to make
Yeah.
it less of a brain damage exercise. Something simple that can be used for town functions and events without the necessary IT, office space, et cetera, of using it for town government. Could we get that to a reasonably low number so that we could talk to the town about, we'd like to move forward with One Pleasant as the functional space for town government while respecting the historic structure of Old Town Hall?
Yeah, that's what we've been kind of veering towards, so I know if,
Well, and you'll need the demolition cost of the annex.
yeah, you need
Yeah.
that.
We do have that cost. We pulled it out of this for this exercise, but there is a cost.
The idea is if you have One Pleasant Street with a solution for Old Town Hall, historic Town Hall, put it together versus repairing, making it so we can use, it may not be new and fancy, but we can use and it's usable, there are no issues, which maybe 16 days, maybe 20 or whatever. But I think one of the reasons why the Pleasant Street project didn't pass is people didn't see a clear path to Old Town Hall.
And Michelle, I think I'd probably push it a step even further in terms of if we don't want to do a little annex outcropping or cantilever like a bathroom essentially. What are our options from John's perspective of if we shut off the top of the attic space? Is there a way for us without an elevator to just maintain the bottom floor of the auditorium, which I realize brings up the bathroom issue, which may be just a non-starter, but I'm just trying to think of, because I do think keeping that little outcropping for the annex is gonna increase the price substantially.
Do you think you will by keeping it?
Yeah, I think if we just use the top floor as attic space or storage, it's not being occupied. We just have one floor, like what's the way we can try to maintain historic town hall without, too much jimmy riggering with the elevator and ADA issues? What options do we have here to even further reduce the price?
I don't disagree with that. My only thought is adding the bathrooms. I think that's what I was trying to avoid.
Well, we definitely need
looking
bathrooms,
at the
no matter what.
plumbing.
The original plan, or one of the plans had bathrooms being added to the front,
Yeah.
which would allow
and
them-
a laundry
Yeah,
area.
that's,
which would then allow them to be used for the common as well as, so if that would have.
That was last year's plan.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's cheaper, it's whatever,
That could be
whatever the
cheaper.
best bang for the buck is. I mean, it's-
Bathrooms.
Slice
really
off the whole
aren't that
annex.
Taking the elevator, putting it back in again.
We know what we're at.
hard.
We can give you more.
So I think you know what we're looking
Yeah.
for.
I got it.
Okay,
But,
yes, Lynn?
not to be a party pooper, but in one of the town hall reports, 2014, I think, talking about the historic part of it. So if we eliminate the use of the second floor, then we don't have to worry about the stairs and the hallway not being wide enough. But there is concern about in the sublevel below the stage, the flooring is 1 inch off the dirt. It's not ADA accessible. And the theater group uses those rooms down there for dressing rooms.
There was a plan for a lift as well. I know there was discussion on one lift being
sorry.
installed in the back for that purpose, Ellen.
Yeah.
Does that sound vaguely familiar to you?
I just want to make sure that we understand that, okay, if we're going to lop off the second floor and not use it, there's still that sublevel floor that has to come up to code if it's going to be used. And I think the theater groups would be very distraught not to have a place to change.
Well, they will.
You'd have to
But-
install ADA, you'd
Yeah,
have to
no,
install some kind
I
of
would agree
lift
with that.
in there to allow that access.
Yeah,
It doesn't,
I thought we were just talking about that main level. And I I wanted to bring up the
No,
sub
you have
level.
to-
Yeah, I know.
You'd have to make sure it's safe and ADA compliant, but,
So Don, to
excuse me.
that talk track, would we want to then restore the bathrooms in that lower level?
There you go.
Because there's bathrooms in that lower level that could be restored. I don't think they'd be great for public use. But nevertheless, there's some bathrooms down there.
They're very interesting, but they're there.
They are.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're worth saving.
I've seen them.
I don't know if they're worth renovating if we were going to add additional toilet rooms, but to your point-
I think you need to look at every option. I think you need to say, if we restore the bathrooms in the sub main level, I don't know, they don't call it a cellar, it's going to be X amount, if
the
we,
dressing rooms.
Huh?
It's the dressing room area.
well, there's dressing rooms, but if there are facilities down there, that are usable, what's the cost of redoing those?
Would exactly say
Um,
that.
Fire suppression is going to have to be, all the wiring has to be redone, the piping. Yeah, and I'd be very interested in having an expert look at the drywall to determine if, in the last renovation in 1928, if it in fact was fire-resistant drywall.
Used horsehair.
Yeah, because none of the town hall analysis said that any of the interior surfaces were
would
fire
think so.
resistant.
I wouldn't spend anything on trying to validate the claim that was made
Yeah,
earlier.
I would.
Okay, all right,
We haven't found such evidence either in any of the documents.
yeah.
Horses were fireproof prior to 1930. So I'm just kidding.
So if you look at it this way, is keep it simple, like Alan was saying, if you do, see what we'd have done the basement or the sub-level.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
But no, I know, I'm,
Dressing room.
but are we better off?
Iteration.
My only thought, that's the reason I was trying to think about saving money, is leaving that extra L on, but if it's less expensive to take it down, but as the bathroom and the elevator, we shut off the second floor, we've talked about this. And you have the main floor, is it cheaper to put in 2 bathrooms, one on the right, one on the left, which was in the other town hall plans? Than keeping the bathrooms that are there now, what's the best way, just to get the place done up and running?
Putting the bathrooms in the front made them accessible to the public for the common.
I like
which
the
was
idea
one
of
of
the
the
I do too,
bathrooms.
I agree with you there.
I think it's worth the money to do it that way.
That-
Okay, so we have, so just to summarize, we know that we don't know. We have an estimate for, a line level estimate for town hall repairs of 16.8 million. Michelle, you are going to, using the same process you just did for repairing, for estimating the repair as is, which is 16.8 million, now doing an estimate for, we demo the annex, but we repair the historic, including looking into the sub-level, and what that may cost at the end of the day, and what we're looking at there, including putting the bathrooms in, where we just talked about in the front of the building. So I think the third issue that we probably want to talk through a little bit is, and let me just back up and say, so we realize there's this group of individuals out there. This is not an official government group at all. The select board has not appointed these individuals. Neither has, the select board is the only one that can appoint a committee, to my knowledge, and we have not done so. We have taken the information in, and reviewed it as a part of what's being provided to us. And following last week, I did contact, just so everyone knows, I contacted, they contacted me, certain of the individuals and offered them an opportunity to come here tonight and talk during this agenda item and have a back and forth with the board if they wanted to. And the main individual, who I think was sort of the group spokesperson, was unable to do so because of a conflict. And so we heard from Mr. Dormitzer summarizing what I believe to be sort of the group, which consists of Mr. Brewer, Mr. Longley, Mr. Dick, and Mr. Dormitzer, summarizing sort of what the group was talking about. So in terms of that, I just wanted everyone, including the board and the public, to know that they were offered an opportunity to come tonight and provide input. And in fact, Mr. Dormitzer and Mr. Dick both made comments at the outset of this meeting. You know, one issue that I think the board probably wants to think through is, given the safety issues that our town building inspector has identified. Now, I will say there's the sort of legalese of back and forth and who knew what, the 1980s, versus the practical reality that our town employees are in a building that we know or should know at this point, given the multiple millions we've spent on consultants and contractors and risk managers and code consultants and fire inspectors, that has issues that needs to be addressed to assist and ensure the safety of our employees. So, and not just the safety of our employees, also, as was explained to me, fire suppression is not just for the safety of our employees. If the historic town hall catches on fire and we continue not to do anything about it, it lights up the common. Our historic common we all profess to love so much because,
When there goes the church.
I mean, the fire suppression is also for the neighboring church and homes. So I do think that when people are saying, well, why are you moving so fast? Well, it's because we do feel like we have to, and we feel like we need to. I'm going to speak for myself. I feel like we have to continue to diligently address this issue, particularly people are in the buildings, and we know the buildings have these obvious flaws that that just need to be addressed. So I did want to open up to the board to get your feedback on how much more you would like to hear from this sort of anointed group. You know, I'm happy to put them on the agenda next week if you want to hear more, but you know, I'm also happy to sort of let it stand on the comments we've already received and all of the letters we've received.
So I would encourage the group that we're talking about to wait until they get a better sense of what we're thinking for Highland Ave. What we heard early on from this group was that the maintenance of Highland Ave was a paramount priority. And I think that's part of what's motivating them at this point. So I think when we show that we're serious about making investments that would maintain Highland Ave, I hope this group would be happy to hear that and would let us continue on. But that group hasn't been transparent yet about whether it's maintain Highland Ave as an available space or as the town hall.
Yes,
Give me a
please,
second.
Mr. Grady. Yep.
The answer is no. There's no plan from them, and I know that back before the special elections, that group was huge proponents of the historic town hall, as we all remember, and fought, you know, tooth and nail, put articles in the paper and everything like that about preserving Old Town Hall. But in this new iteration, I don't think 41 Highland Avenue factors in at all. They're looking at 41 and a half. So they have no plan, as far as I know, and from what I gather, they have no plan for 41.
Well, when you say 41 and a half, what are you talking about?
The new building up behind on the ledge.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
I'm putting it to that. So they want to build a new town hall up on the ledge. Yes, it preserves a building in the common. I understand that. But when the pushback was 41 Highland Avenue, I don't think they have a plan for that. their plan is for a new building. And then let the town figure out what we're gonna do with the old. So I just have to put that to anybody in TV land who's thinking about it, is that there is no plan. So we're coming up with a plan, and I think for them to maybe ride the coattails, I think is a little disingenuous. And I would say this, can I throw something else out there?
I won't stop you.
Good. I think that with the building being in the condition it is, I really want to start making some arrangements, some work at home, getting the building cleared out. I don't want to seem, and I've read all the letters and things like that. I think we really got to come up with that sooner than later, until we come up with a cogent plan for town hall, be it One Pleasant, be it CJC. But we've got to start looking at the people going in and out of that building. I did say to Mr. Dick tonight, how would you feel if something happened to any one of those guys that are in that building? I don't think that went over too well, but I think we got to start taking a look at that, is putting our words into action. If the building's unsafe, it's unsafe.
Well, a number of spirited conversations with different people. I'm not sure it's quite a monolithic group, and I don't think it's the same necessarily group that opposed the Pleasant Street. I mean, there's some cross people back and forth. But a couple of things we should be aware of. One of the things, the architect's opinion, Peter Longley, pretty well reasoned, and basically what he went and he spoke to the architect, and he said that we may not be as much under the gun because of some of the things that were stated in the building inspector's letter about this would not necessarily stand up. That being said, let me make it very clear, we now know we have a problem, and the town cannot afford to ignore that. So I'm all in on that, and I agree with Gene that we know about it. We've actually known about it for quite a while. We're kind of we're not in a good position if something were to happen in there. So I think we need to be aware of that. I do think that some of the things they bring up, or may not bring up, what I stressed to some of them is, if you have some ideas, put them in a written proposal and submit it to the select board so we can submit it to the town comprehensively. If you really have an idea of things, they're citizens, we'd welcome them to hear that. But don't come in here and have a discussion and back and forth, come up with some real plans. And I think if they were to do that, I think the town would expect that we would hear it. And they may or may not have some good ideas. As far as this thing on 40 and a half or whatever it is, down the line, somebody's gonna knock down some ledge and build a new town hall and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's just pie in the sky stuff. There's no real proposal there. All we have is a architect who's on the planning board, and I don't know if that gives him any authority, but he's done an architect's rendering, which is essentially a picture, a sketch. So I don't think at this point, that's, properly before us to be taken seriously. So let's not waste our time on that. But I do think that if somebody or any group in town can come up with some very well thought out and written, and the reason we want it written is because it's very hard for us as a select board and for the town as a whole to evaluate something that's not laid out. And I know who you were talking about, Gene. I think one of the reasons why he might have been busy is because I had spoke to him and told him in no uncertain terms, nicely, because I know him well, come up with a written plan, a detailed plan. That's what we want. And if they can come up with that, I would welcome that. There may be some things. I don't think that we're necessarily under the gun because of the letter, because I think some of the facts, which were documented and with proper citations, would suggest that perhaps that letter may have been issued in error. But again, that does not mean that we should not move very quickly, because doesn't matter. We now have, as a town, as a select board, we now have knowledge of a real serious and public knowledge. Something were to happen, we have no defense. So, my thoughts.
Ellen, do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I was listening to Jack and I concur. I mean, whether or not the content of, quote, the letter and the consultant's assessment is true, in fact, to CMR 780, 4th edition, 9th edition, whatever edition, we know we don't have a fire suppression system. We know, and regardless if that just means sprinklers, we don't have an alarm system, an audio alarm system in the 1857 building. So that's part of my understanding, part of the fire suppression system. So we do have to act. And I think it's foolhardy to say the letter was erroneous, so therefore you don't have to vacate. What we heard tonight from Mr. Dormitzer, we put the town at great liability because of the letter. We put the town at greater liability by not reacting. And we owe it first and foremost to the staff, our town staff, which has been through all of this, craziness, to treat them respectfully and provide a safe working environment. And then we owe it to the town for a plan for 41 Highland Ave. I think to do anything without a plan for 41 Highland Ave, we're going to lose. We'll be 0 for 5. Okay? So we can talk about One Pleasant, 380 CJC, 41A Highland Ave. We can talk about a lot of things, but if we don't have a plan for 41 Highland Ave, it's not going to matter. So I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, we don't have the luxury of time to wait until town meeting in June to make a decision.
I think we've all.
Do we?
I think we're all in agreement on that, is that I agree with you wholeheartedly, and Jack and Chris, that that's where we do have to have a cogent plan for 41.
Yeah.
I fully agree. And that's where we're asking, what's the best, most economical way to do it? And also, Chris, is that we don't have those liabilities, is to really start getting back into, and I'll use the old COVID protocols, even though we're people in out, but we've got to make arrangements to get out of the building. That's my thought. You guys can disagree with me on that. But, so I'm putting that out there.
Yeah, so I would say, I do think that, while I realize these residents are well-intended or are saying they are, as someone who sues people for a living, I completely agree with Jack and Ellen, and I think everyone that, like, the horse is out of the barn on the town hall, and this back and forth isn't gonna,
Isn't going to change it.
isn't gonna change that reality. A letter from the architect who did the annex that now we have to grapple with, 40 years later is not exactly persuasive, particularly where he can't remember anything, but thought this, it would have been his practice. Like, that's just not admissible in a court of law. And so I think that, I'd like to move us past, what I consider to be input that we've certainly looked at, we've taken into account, we've had our lawyers look at, and at this point, we just need to actually start to get to solutions and figure out, okay, let's move on. We've heard you. Thank you. And I think what they're advocating for are really two options. Either what I'm hearing from them is appeal and try to change this letter and spend all this taxpayer money on essentially a bureaucratic spat, or move out of town hall. And I think what we're saying is we need to move out of town hall because we know we don't have fire suppression and all sorts of issues that have been sort of unwrapping themselves year after year. And so then the question is, what does move out of town hall mean? What are we actually saying when we say that?
And is there an alternative fire suppression component other than a full-blown sprinkler alarm system that would ensure more safety that could be done so that a move-out is a temporary move-out.
Or that in combination with minimizing the use of the space until more comprehensive solutions can be put in place.
Mhm.
Just because I don't want to completely handcuff Chris in how we address it.
But we do have protocols though, right? We have Willicott, we have, I mean, we do have,
Well, if I could just piggyback on what you're saying, I completely agree with the board's focus on finding a solution and not relating, because relating the past is what this town has done far too long. And you end up these feedback loops. And, you know, again, I'm not questioning anybody's intentions, right? That said, the practical reality is we could keep spinning in circles and wasting our energy on fighting over what the architect remembers from 1988, or recognizing that we've had report after report after report that says there's problems. And whether it's this section of CMR or that one, we need to do something. And to continue that conversation, yes, there are alternatives. We've talked about them. We've met internally to find alternative ways that we can minimize risk and still, you know, provide services. None of them are optimal because we can't continue to operate the building in the way it's been because it hasn't been operated. We can't continue to operate the building as if nothing, as if we don't know all of these things that we know, and that we know that there's not an answer that's going to be resolved tomorrow. And even if everyone agreed on a plan to get that building in whatever format, after we get all these other pricings done, it's going to take years. It's going to take years to get it to where the community will be proud of it again, where it's, you know, it's a really a place where people will celebrate the future. So I will say that yes, we can come up with alternatives. There are alternatives that we can do that involve some partial use of the structure with additional work. Exactly what that is, we're still discussing, so that there's a degree of interim safety. That's what it's not a permanent solution, but it buys time. Again, I'm ready to have those conversations. I mean, we continue to have them internally, and we can hammer them depending on how the board directs over the next couple of weeks. We can go down a path.
I would suggest, I think we want to explore as quickly as we can, including starting to, let's remote people who can be remoted. If someone wants to come in and chat, they can, you know, make an appointment to talk with someone who's not like their frontline public access person. Let's see to the extent, because I know we were already talking about the senior center. If we think it's going to be a potential, well, I think a part of it depends on what happens with the RFPs, but you know, consider other space as well, plus whatever partial solution, although I do think, I don't want our building inspector to feel at all like we're pressuring him towards some sort of solution. We should figure out how to vacate if we need to vacate, and if in his professional judgment, that is what we should be doing. And a workaround is not advisable because we have to put safety first.
So I do think that if with these continuing conversations, you have a lot to absorb. I fully appreciate that, and a lot of community pulse to take. If over the next couple of weeks we can get to that, I'd rather move people once than twice or three times.
Yep. Yeah.
Most of our staff are not equipped with, you know, they're not with home offices. They're just not.
Yeah.
And you know, I spoke with Jean the other day while I was walking my dog at home. Town hall had opened, but I was at home. And I spoke with Ellen that very same night from my desk late after town hall closed. So, you know, we do have Michelle can have whatever flexibility she wants, and she has, and other people do too. That said, we still need to be able to provide public-facing services. People who want to pay their taxes or get a birth certificate or check a building permit or talk to the planner or check their assessments. And the sooner the board gives more clarity as to how you want to do that, it's going to help us design that solution. Is that?
then at the very least, what do we have for people coming in and out of town hall right now?
We still have, I don't know.
Same people coming in and out, right?
Well, I mean, there's probably 30 to 40 people at least a day that come in for a variety of reasons.
I'm of the mind, again, they said it themselves. Ralph Dorrance was saying it
Yeah,
right off the bat about liabilities and things like that. You know, I'll have to agree with them. so we've got, again, like Gene just said, there's gotta be appointments. I mean, it's a hardship, but if we keep doing what we're doing and saying weeks, and I know it takes time, I know you don't wanna move twice or 2 or 3 times, what I'm saying is this, but we're exposing ourselves and we want to reach a solution. And sometimes getting to that solution, there's a couple bumps along the way.
Yes, and again, I think I think we have a few, we're working in good faith, right? So I'm confident that we can do this strategically over the next couple of weeks and try to minimize the impact on residents as much as our staff and still keep people safe. So I want you to understand, safety is the number one priority. Also, delivering quality services remains a top priority, so we have to.
And I do want to make one point. Let's not demonize our building inspector. Because the real reality is that we've been looking at this town hall for 10 years. We've had 3 major things. The town lost any ability to defend itself against anything that would come from lack of a fire expression system. We lost our ability to defend that years ago. So let's not put it at our building inspectors.
Thank you for that.
Right.
Well,
Now, I do want him to approve this thing I have before him.
and I couldn't figure out why he's asking, they're looking at us to appeal
Again, I
a
think
decision from our building inspector. I mean,
the board is focused on exactly the right answer, which is a strategic approach of a very big challenge, right? And it's not gonna all be answered tomorrow, but you're doing exactly the steps necessary to get to an answer that they'll be on a path to get to an answer. Now, I'm also gonna actively work, and I'll report back to you next week. We're gonna be able to take these various steps, and
Hey, Chris, can I just interject for a second? So I think it would help to hear from the board that we do have 2 RFPs before us. We have to make a decision within 30 days, is that right, Michelle?
They're being held for 90 days.
For now, oh,
But our time crunch is the letter issued.
by John. Okay, Okay.
There isn't a you must vacate by a certain date on that letter. That said, it's hangovers, right?
yeah.
well, that's
Yeah.
where I was going with it. That
How much time, that's the question.
Well, that's why, I think maybe what you're hearing is remote seems like it could be the least impactful to, as we try to work through the RFP. In the interim, we're trying to remote anyone who can be remoted to be remoted. That said, we still have some of the public facing services to think through and access to information and documents. And I agree on terms of not wanting to move twice. So maybe this is a combination of a discussion with John to see if there's interim repairs that he thinks would help satisfy some of the safety issues combined with remoting some folks to try to extract them out of, the building. So we're minimizing contact within the building. And at the same time, if we quickly learn that that is not feasible, then I think we probably need to be looking at, which we've already started to have discussions about, using some of the senior center for some of that public facing service delivery, in part because, it's brand new, it's got the elevators, it's fully accessible, which is really good, including because we have a lot of folks that need that access. I think we probably also want to look at maybe on the permitting and inspections, if there's a place, because that's a pretty public facing unit too.
The challenge that we've discovered is that as we look at absent this building, and this again, right now, this building has a heavy heating problem.
Yeah.
Is that some of the other locations that we'd like to do are not really publicly, they don't meet ADA compliance for, like, even the building in the parking lot, the team that's being used is not fully ADA compliant. Bathrooms are not ADA compliant, so we couldn't get public in there easily with handicap
So I
accessibility.
think what we're running into is there is no perfect solution.
No, there isn't, so we have to, right,
And
sorry.
Technically, we're in an
Reduce
emergency
risk,
situation.
Yes, until we can find a permanent solution, is I think the marching order.
Yeah, I think, Chris, could we, for example, with the teen center, the teens don't use it until 3 o'clock. So could we have it open from 7 to 3 for
We could
permitting
relocate
and?
it entirely to another, well, we've been talking about options that will, yes, there are things we can do. And there's,
Which we may need to do anyway, because if we're trying to fix some of the fire suppression issues. then-
so while the board is in active consideration
Yeah.
of the RFPs and options, there's additional work we will do. And if I need to come back to you next week and say, we need to take these steps, I'm gonna go to the advisory committee for some emergency money or something, I'll report back.
Okay. And while Chris is doing that work on his end, does the board feel like there's work we need to do on our end as we start to engage the public on some of the bigger options, whether it's the bigger short-term options or the long-term options, like, for example, what is it, love it or list it? Like, what are we doing with town hall? It's 16.8 million, and Michelle's gonna probably come back to us with a pared down price once we get rid of the annex. Do we want to do a public forum? Do we want to do some more outreach?
I do think a public forum is a good idea. I think prior to a public forum, we as a select board, not tonight, because it's getting late,
Yeah,
should come up with a framework of a plan that we would take to that public forum, even if we don't have final pricing on what some renovation to Highland Ave would be, to see if it's something that folks would support.
If we have an idea, some placards or something that we can present, I agree with you 100%. If you have a guesstimate, I know it's, we're going back to the well for about the 50th time. But hopefully this time it comes up dry. But I agree, we should have a public forum and this is what the board is recommending, and this is what we think.
and we did talk about a survey too, that I think we want to be careful about, but I do think it's good to get some feedback, even if,
If you come up with some plans, have a public forum, you gotta have a survey that says, that could go in conjunction with that, saying, here are the options, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think that if we, lead them to a degree, because you're gonna have a lot of people just dropping in. If you do a survey, a blank survey and get it out, you're just gonna be going through,
oh, yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
like,
I
put up
just,
TPs on the comment. All right, let's build it, tear it down, put a log cabin.
well,
You can do a forum on Facebook Live, by the way, take live comments from.
Okay.
So we could do that at a meeting, but we have to have this time around some cogent plans.
well, and I would suggest maybe we want to do a survey on the long-term options so as not to run afoul of the bid process that's underway as we speak, because we don't want to, we need to make sure that we're also making the bid, assessing the bid on the merits and not anything else. Yeah,
Yeah, I think what we really come down to is a lot of dollars and cents. We have a 68 just to do something, and then we have some temporary things till we get to that. And I don't know how long that would take to do those repairs, a couple of years anyway. So, and the other option is to bite the bullet and say, yeah, we're gonna buy 21 or One Pleasant. And then this is the plan for Old Town Hall, the historic town hall, and that's what it's gonna cost. And then we start looking at debt service. We'd start looking at the 178,000 that we originally would have gotten. How much will that borrow, and then this whole thing? And so you really spreadsheet it out and you say, all right, this is one option and that's the other option. But we gotta decide one way or the other, because we cannot keep diddling around and back and forth. And then and I think if we start moving people out as quickly as possible, and we tell people, look, this is what it is. We haven't been able to do anything. Is it an inconvenience to town hall? Yes, it is. It's an inconvenience for everybody. But we have a sense of urgency that I'm not sure our taxpayers and our citizens quite understand the urgency yet. So we've got to start executing this, and then we have to we do it this way or we do it that way, and neither one is pain-free. what do you want?
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may suggest, I think we're all in a pretty aligned position
Yep.
on this issue.
I think so.
And further discussion to reach a proposal or a plan for a public forum in a future meeting might make sense, but I think we've sufficiently beaten this horse for this evening.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Well, we
right,
have a
second
town
it.
manager update. I hear you, Mr. Black, so.
We just updated.
All
it.
right.
Productive conversation, however, I just,
Could I just add in one quick thing? And everyone, don't kill me for this, but Mr. Sawchuk did bring up an interesting question. I think it's worth you guys thinking about, and then not to add to your plate, I'm sorry, but it is a very interesting thought. So,
Yeah, but I thought about that too. And this building is, this building is, so we don't get into discussion, this building is owned by someone else. by
No, we
another-
own it.
by another
We
party.
own it.
All right,
We
I
own
take
it.
that, I stand corrected. All right.
if the proponent of the idea is willing to do the work to flesh out the idea,
I don't think you can, because we own the building.
then, yeah.
There's also other plans for that.
This building was designed
That space.
with the elevator on the side
Okay,
for another wing that was going to be independent living for seniors, if I recall, some kind
I
of
see.
apartment.
Okay.
So that it was designed to have another attachment. Now, I don't know how big that really was, because there's not that much land with it there.
So we're competing with that.
But that's never come to fruition. So,
But we're competing with that vision, Chris,
He said 6,400 square feet.
to me.
this was always conceived as a campus for.
So it seems to me we're competing with these, with the one thing.
All right, sorry,
All
right.
sorry to raise
Thanks,
it. Does anyone think it's worth?
If there's something already baked that we can look at, yes. However,
Okay, if there's a plan already there,
We'll share what we have.
extract it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Town manager update. Go
I just
for it.
wanted to report on one good thing. We won a $196,000 Green Community Grant. It's going to put improvements to the integrated building controls at the Osgood School and the Deer Hill School. So thank you for the team, including Michelle, for, okay, she didn't do anything, but she's going to take credit. I'm going to give her credit anyway, for helping with our green community. So that was, just got the letter, very excited. And it's part of our ongoing investment in making the schools, putting the schools at the top of our green communities program. That's it.
Okay. Select board comments. Mr. Creighton,
Motion to adjourn?
a select board comment?
That's my comment.
Oh, okay. Mr. Plex?
I would like to briefly thank town staff for both boiling the ocean and continuing to push the rock uphill on town hall and a number of other issues. So thank you. We appreciate your patience and dedication.
Mr. Grady?
I'll second that, and then I'll second, Ellen gets to speak.
Yep. Ms. Moore?
I don't really have any town news, but just so you all know, we're on baby watch tomorrow night. I'm not having a baby. Stranger things have happened, but I'm not having a baby.
Congratulations, Ellen.
Thanks.
That's great.
All right, now I'll second that motion to Mr. Creighton.
Wait, I have
Oh,
a,
yeah.
I
You
got
have
a
a chair. You
comment.
got-
Okay. So I realize there's been some friction with the change to doing public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which actually is something that our school committee has done for quite some time with success. It helps meeting management, and many, many towns in Massachusetts do it, including to better comply with recent Supreme Judicial case law. That said, I certainly would take feedback from my fellow board members if you thought it was constricting your ability to get a fulsome back and forth. I do remain concerned at times. I feel like some of the commenters perhaps like to cross-examine our town staff and use the select board meetings as a platform for vetting, which is really not meant to be. It's meant to be a way to intake information and the board to reach decisions and make deliberations from my perspective. But to the extent that my fellow select board members feel like that back and forth does help them do that, I'm open to it. But I am going to try to stay firm that our town staff really should not be cross-examined during our meetings. And this wasn't my idea, actually. Someone came to me with this idea out of concern for that issue. and made a wise suggestion, which I've been following up on. So again, this is really meant to maintain civility and have the proper function that I believe the board should be doing. But I'm open to feedback, so I'll leave it at that.
I can say this, if it touched a nerve, then it's a good thing. So, especially with the proponents or the opponents of it, I think it worked out well. I think you can make exceptions to the rule at different points in time, you know, if we're calling, say, if you give them the time constraints, but I like having the comments at the beginning of the meeting myself.
I agree with the chair's comments. I agree with Mr. Grady that it is the chair's prerogative to give people additional flexibility beyond what has already been laid out. And I would also encourage folks who feel that they have missed that opportunity to start putting their comments in writing. They are then part of public record, and the board can consider them in writing.
And what I probably should do is put this as an agenda item so we can deliberate and discuss, including if we want a board protocol, that's something that we can do, including saying, you know, you can provide comments to us in writing if you want to do so, but you can also request to be on the agenda if, you know, you feel that there's a substantial back and forth we need to do. So I should probably do that in the future, which is probably the most appropriate way to have this deliberation. So minutes, do we have any?
I don't know if there were comments from the other end.
Jack? No?
What? No,
Okay, I think Jack's waiting for his,
my only comment was motion to adjourn. It's been ignored repeatedly.
all right, we have a motion.
But it hasn't been
All
called
those in
for yet.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous aye.
Oh, really?
Good topic.